we're going to talk about cardboard as a structural material. Cardboard is actually, believe it or not, and you probably already know to a certain degree, cardboard is very, very strong. And it's designed, it's manufactured, it's engineered to be very strong. There are different kinds of cardboard. There are different kinds of corrugated cardboard, okay? This is what they call 1/8" single ply corrugated. But there are multiple ply corrugated. If you go and look at melon boxes in Walmart, like when they have pumpkins delivered to Walmart, they're in these boxes. And the walls of those boxes are 3 or 4 ply cardboard. They're immensely strong, okay? Really, really strong. So they can hold several hundred pounds. So cardboard is a very strong material, but you got to know how to use it right. And I am going to emphasize too, measure twice, measure 3 times, cut once. Use special tools, like these tools that I'm using right now. This thing right here, this is a square that they use primarily for cutting sheetrock. It's a building tool. I have a variation on that tool right here. Okay? This one's nice because I can basically have essentially a framer square, something like this. Okay? I can essentially have one of those, or I can have one of these. There are little tracks that this locks into, but if I loosen this up, okay, until this pops out, I also have the ability to go 30, 45, 80, 75, or 60, 75, 90, and I can go different directions. So I can utilize this if I need straight cuts at an angle. This is a good tool to use. So precision is everything on this assignment. So making absolutely certain that everything you do is measure twice, cut once. Everything has to be precise. Or you're going to encounter things where you have big old ugly gaps. You don't want ugly gaps. You want precise, clean gaps. Now there are some times where you do your level best and things still are a problem. That's where I'll show you something that you can do, and I wouldn't recommend this on every chair. I don't do it myself if I build in cardboard, but you can soak this entire side of this sheet of cardboard until it gets down in. The glue is water soluble that holds these together. Once you break through that water soluble glue, you can peel this whole thing off, and what you end up is with some paper tape. And you can glue and tape over seams and create a consistent kind of taped seam. It's got to be crafted though. If you see it, you got to design it. So these tools right here are really useful. You can get them up on the table like this, but then there's this gap right here, and that creates a problem holding this against here. So usually what I'll do is I'll pull my cutting board right to the edge of the table. So this hangs over the edge of the table, and then I'll push this down. Now this can be helpful and time saving because I've got measurements across here. One thing you need to pay attention to though on these, if you look here, this starts at, this is like 2 inches right here, 3 inches, 4 inches. So if I say I need this 12-inch piece, that's only 10 inches. And it's 2 inches short. So you've got to take into account that that is there. So if I need 12 inches, I need to take that into account and slide this over to 14 inches, okay, like that. Now, if I keep this nice and flush all the way along the edge, slow is fast. Do you understand that statement? If you're trying to move fast, you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have to go back, and you're going to have to address and deal with those mistakes, fix those mistakes, and fast ends up being slow. Okay, so slow is fast here. Take time, be careful. Make sure everything is lined up precisely. Okay? Make sure you hold things tight. Make sure you've got a sharp blade. Make sure when you cut, remember, I'm not just cutting with this vertical, I'm actually angling in just a little bit. That keeps it right against my cutting surface. Okay. And if I cut precisely, I'm going to get through that. That doesn't fall apart completely. I don't want to tear that. This knife will follow that groove that you've already created. And I can cut that, what I end up with is something that's very clean and precise. Okay? So slow as fast. Don't try to rush this. Now I'm going to move this over and I'm just going to cut a 12-inch square. Make sure that's all lined up. Double check everything. And I didn't go to 14, see, I double checked. Double check. So, triple check. So anyway, so now I have a 12-inch by 10-inch piece of cardboard. Useless. All right, but I'm just demoing right now anyway. That's the fun of demo, because if I screw up, then you don't feel so bad when you screw up. It's going to happen. But you can see there, I'm talking, I'm not paying attention. I didn't listen to my own words and I made a mistake. You've got 4 sheets of cardboard. You don't get 5 sheets. So if you plan on 4 sheets and you accidentally miscut, guess what? You got to pivot. You got to change some things. You got to adjust that. I'm not giving out freebies. Okay. So I'm going to just come in here. Let's do. We'll do 7 inches. So that's going to be 5 inches there. So again, it says 7 on here. It says 5 right here. Okay, so just be aware. So now, if I want some squares, and obviously I'm working small right now, obvious reason. Double check. Sure that the measurement is the same. I don't want to make that same mistake twice in front of you. That would be embarrassing. Sure it's all lined up. So if I'm careful about that, those should line up perfect either way, and they do. Okay? So when you're being conscious, I wasn't being conscious here, but when you're being conscious, you can get that accuracy. Now, you take these pieces right here, okay? Tubes in the cardboard are going this way. Think tubes, strong, okay? Horizontally, those tubes they're not structural. So if I come in here and let me cut this down so it's the same height as this one. Let's do this. Okay. Flip it over. I'm being very careful right now just because I'll just demo this. Okay, so this and this same height. Okay, and you know what? I'll even trim this one down so it got exactly the same because I don't want to wreck those just yet. Okay, so this one, tubes are vertical. Okay, it's not real stable, but if I put my hand on this and I can support it, I can push down on this. My fingers are touching, they're pushing into the side of this thing. And I'm pushing enough that it leaves a mark in my hand before that breaks. Okay? So I'm gonna do the exact same thing with this, only the tubes are horizontal, and I'm gonna put my fingers in the same place. It immediately collapses with very little weight. Okay? So when it collapses like that, that's because my tubes are horizontal. So what you should learn from that is any of your vertical supports through your chair, those tubes probably ought to be vertical. Now there might be a point where a horizontal to structurally support things going across might make sense to a certain degree. But if there's something engaging the ground, so if there's some support that's suspended up in the air like this, okay, and it's crossing, it might make sense to have my tubes as this piece going across because there's a certain amount of resistance when I bend like this, okay? But having that, the vertical support that touches the floor, that's different. So a whole bunch of concepts here that are gonna take a little bit on the uptake. So this piece right here, though, now look, there's my tubes vertical. I've got that bend in that. If I flip this the other way, I probably just put some of your body weight on that, okay, before that collapsed and crushed, okay? So now we can say, well, what if I just take this piece right here, and I'm just gonna, I'll just do this. Let's do something like that. It's not even glue, right?
I got this.
Okay, that was well more than your body weight. That was just sitting
Oh,
on this.
definitely.
Easily more than your body weight. That was just, that hurt. But it
You
crushed a
maybe
little
go away
bit.
next time.
It crushed a little bit, but that's a single ply piece of cardboard, okay, that's holding a significant amount of weight. So if I have more spindly vertical supports, first of all, it's easier to bend the cardboard along the tubes. That actually hurt.
Okay, let me see. Let me see if I can balance on this.
It is crushed on one side, so be careful because it has.
I don't know if I can balance. If I had another one, I could.
Yeah, you could stand it.
Oh.
It's not glued either. The glue adds strength. So that is helpful. Now think of this. Y'all know we talked about plywood last time, didn't we? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I've got two identical little squares here. If I take this and I put the tubes horizontal, and I take this and I put the tubes vertical, I've just created something even stronger. So, because this is going to want to resist bending this way, and it's going to want to resist bending this way. Now, say this is a vertical support in my chair, I could sandwich this with another vertical piece. I don't know, this is probably a slightly different size, but if I sandwich this, so I've got two vertical on the outside and horizontal on the inside, I've just created a very strong laminate. Okay? That's going to be really, really sturdy, and it's going to resist bending in multiple directions. If I had both of these the same way, that's going to be fairly easy for me to pop. And if the tubes are all facing vertical, if I push on this, that's going to be fairly easy for those tubes to pop. But as soon as I turn this so the tubes are going different ways, that's going to become, I could still pop it, but it's going to become significantly more difficult to pop this piece, okay? So be conscious of those kinds of things. Now, these books, by the way, the World Book, we don't keep them over there because we think you're going to go diving into them to find our knowledge. They're there as weights. Okay? You can find all the weights you need online now. There are also weights outside on a cart, all these gym weights. They're really useful as well. So what I have here, this is 4-ply now. This is 2 going horizontal, 2 going vertical. That is immensely strong no matter where you put that. Okay? That is going to be immensely strong. There's no way I can physically crush this. It's just not going to happen. So this becomes more like dimensional lumber than it does cardboard, and it's 4-ply. So if you have some real critical support points in your chair, you may want to consider multiple ply sections, especially if you're spanning a larger distance where there is the potential for it to overcome the tensile strength. Multiple ply is going to be very valuable to you. Okay? Look how perfect that cut is. Okay? You're not going to get that by sitting here and tracing this out and cutting each one of these out individually. So if I take this messed up piece of cardboard here and I line this up and I'm very careful, and I come in here and I trace this like that. Oop, it didn't draw all the way. It's cool. So I could come in here and I could very carefully, I could even line up a ruler along here. That's not really the problem cut. The problem cut is this one right here. These knives are not made, they don't really cut on curves very effectively. So as careful as I am, and I am genuinely trying to be careful, so it'll be close. Now imagine trying to do that on something that's actually, this is maquette size. Imagine trying to do that chair size. So if 2 inches equals a foot, that's what, 2, 4, 6, so 3 feet. Imagine trying to get a perfect line cut each time over 3 feet on a single ply. Don't do that. What you can do is you can come in here, you could trace a little box right here and cut out a whole bunch of sheets of cardboard. So you go in 4 ply, cut out 4 sheets of cardboard that have this, and you're gonna have to plan on this as being scrap or maybe tabs or something. I'll show you tabs here in a little bit. But then you take those sheets, you glue them all together and make sure these edges all line up. Okay? And then you'll lay your template, trace that arc onto the big piece, and then you'll use this tool right here. Okay? Jigsaw. It's basically like a handheld, it works kind of like a handheld bandsaw. There's what's called the scrolling blade in here. And when I pull that trigger, that thing goes back and forth like that. Variable speed, that's going to tear your cardboard. That's going to cut your cardboard. So be aware of that. But this tool, that's exactly how I cut these out. They end up being very clean, very precise, very perfect. If they're not, you can actually take them over to the spindle sander, or you can use the disc sander, or there's some belt sanders and things in here that I can show you that you can clean this up. But the key to this whole process is precision. Everything's got to be precise. Literally everything you do has got to be thoughtful, careful, precise, or you're going to have problems. Okay? So this right here, I glue laminated this a minute ago. By what I mean, while you were out, I glue laminated this. By glue laminating, I mean I just stuck the cardboard together. Okay, I'm going to come here. These are going opposite directions. I like that. If I knew I was just doing vertical and I didn't need any other structural integrity and strength, I'd probably have my tubes going the same direction, going vertical. Any other thing, it's probably a good idea. Like if you're doing a seat, I'd probably do at least 3 ply for a seat because it will crush. I'm going to show you here in a minute a single ply seat that will crush under my weight. Okay? So I usually alternate them like this. Now you do not need a ton of glue. We go through a lot of glue on this project, more than we really need. So I'm going to just come here and I'm just going to line out about a 1/2 inch or so, maybe a 1/4 inch in from the edge. And I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on there. And I'm going to close this. Now this is another thing. If you will just, you don't have to do this every time, but if you will just clean these up, close them and clean them up whenever you're using them, these are easy to use. These get so gummed up that they break, you can't open them, they're just crap all over the top of them. That's bad form. Leaving your tools a mess is bad form. Now, another thing you need to consider, I've seen this happen to people. If I want a brown side and a white side, I've got to be conscious of that. But if I want, there are some people who don't want to have any of the white. If that's the case, I've seen somebody who went through this process. Sorry, see what I'm doing right now? I'm spreading that glue and getting a nice thin layer all the way with it. That's holding together pretty good. wipe that excess off there. Be conscious though, if you want your chair all brown or all white, that goes all the way back to the cutting. If you cut a piece wrong and you find out, oh geez, I've got the white out instead of the brown. Be aware of that. Okay, I could put one of these on here, but notice how it's not pressuring the entire thing. That's where I'll come here and I'll do that and I'll do that. Now there's pressure across the entire surface. The other thing that helps too with is warping. Now, I'm going to just show you the operation of this tool. There are lots of tools in the measuring box over there. If you've got circles or arcs or whatever, we've got these. You can describe a gigantic arc, a full-size chair arc with this. So if that's part of your process, having the right tool is also goes to precision, okay? So I'm not gonna be like very careful about this, but say I want that arc right there. And if I was careful and I had the right template and I've measured everything out, I could actually cut this so these become two identical halves. That's actually how that would happen. But I can just come over here. Safety with this, okay, is that little blade right there. That thing will cut you severely if it gets your finger. So just make sure that your finger is never in the way of that blade and that you never cut into the table. Now, I'm not going to be very careful right now just for time. I didn't follow my line just because I'm cutting really fast. But if I was just going for a 2-ply, that right there, and these are both going the same direction, that 2-ply right there, if I tried to cut these with a utility knife and then glue them together, these are going to be off. They're not going to be exact. Now they're exact. I don't know how close I got. Pretty close. But yesterday it was exact. It was surprising, and I said do that another 100 times and I wouldn't be able to do it. So accurate. I can use sandpaper on this. So if I have little areas where it tore or something, or I have some little whiskers on here. Remember, whiskers are bad unless you use them as a design element. Repeat them multiple times, and even then they might still be bad. But if you're needing multiple plies, don't sit and cut them out by hand. Okay? Cut out several pieces, and then laminate those pieces together, and then cut them. Now, let's say I need like 3 or 4 of these that are identical. Okay? Here's what I would do. I would cut out, so let's say I'm doing 3. So I've got one on the outside, one on the center, and one on the outside. Say I'm doing 3 of these. Okay? What I would do is I would cut out full size 6 of the pieces that I'm going to cut these out of. I would glue 2 of those into 3 sets of 2, and then I would put all of those sets of 2 together, and then I'd grab, I wouldn't tape it because tape tears the cardboard. But what I can do, grab a couple of these clamps here, and I would have my line drawn on my very top piece, but I would have 6 plies, 3 sets of 2 underneath that. And I would get a few of these clamps, and don't clamp too hard. It may be good to maybe put a scrap of cardboard here because these clamps are dirty. Put some of that, and then then if I crush, I'm crushing these, I'm not crushing these. And then I can figure out a way to kind of hold this against the table. I can even put another clamp right here. And all 6 of those will be cut at exactly the same time. And what I'll end up with is 3 identical supports rather than a whole bunch of weirdly cut pieces, because I tried to come a lot faster than trying to cut each of them out individually. Okay, so that's a good little trick that you can have. Now, here's another trick over here. I've taken this, okay? I'm gonna build another one of these so you can see how it's done. This was the one I built yesterday for last class. This thing right here, I have carefully, from the same edge, measured out 6-inch increments, both sides here. And then I have a 2-inch extra bit right there. This thing right here is kind of a poor man's bender. They have metal benders. Now, the way this is set up, it's clamped on the table really tight. It's got these 8-inch pieces of wood here. It's bowing down in the middle because of the tension, which actually works for us. But if I push that, it opens up the middle, and I can push this in like that. Then when I let go, it doesn't like to move as easily. Okay? So it's just a poor man's bender. You might want to move over here so you can see. Now what I'm doing, this is lined up even with the edge of the table, or pretty close. Probably it's not going to want to move, but it's close enough. So I'm just going to come here, and I'm going to, my little marks that I've got here, I'm just going to line them up so they're about the same distance. So you can all come over here close too if you want. But I'm lining these up so my marks are just a little past here. I don't want to try to bend this with my hands because it's going to bend inconsistently. So I've got this piece of wood right here that I can put right against the fence like this and just bend, just like that, okay? And then I'm going to pull this out to my next set of marks. So if you've got a chair that's going to require this kind of bending, do something this way, because again, it's precision. Get my marks lined up, pop. Doesn't always bend exactly on your marks. That is one thing I will make you aware of. If we had a really precise like sheet metal bender in here, we'd probably get it dead on the marks. But this is still, ooh, that one was almost dead on. This is still a very precise process, even if you don't get dead on the marks. And sometimes it's going to pop depending on the tube. So this one popped off of my mark by about 1/8 of an inch because the tube was in a different place. And that's something you can't predict. So there's a certain level of precision that is just not going to be possible with the cardboard. I'm going to break here, but that's not going to be a problem for this process. Okay. So as precise as you can possibly be with cardboard, which is pretty precise, but there's going to be some limitations. So I left this extra 2 inches as a little tab thing here. Okay? So now I've got 6 sides, so what I'm creating is this hexagonal tube. And rather than overlap this is what a lot of people do. They overlap that, and then I've got this one side that's very recognizable seam. So if I just flip that and go inside like this, then that seam is right on the corner. And it's still recognizable, but it's not like really glaringly obvious. So just little things, little thoughtful things like that can be important. Now this is where these can come in handy as well. Got a whole bunch of these over there. You've all used them, or many of you have used them. I'm just going to take my glue, and I'm going to go, because this is going to sit on the inside, I'm just going to run a little bit along that edge, a little bit along that edge, maybe right there. Okay. Bring this around and put those together, and I kind of want to wiggle them just a little bit too, like I did the other pieces, just to spread that glue and get it nice and filled in that seam. Then I'll bring that right over close on this edge. Just clamp that down. Don't clamp it down so much that it crushes the cardboard. If it crushes the cardboard, you lose strength. That's another thing that I actually forgot to mention to the class yesterday. But if you've got cardboard out on the floor, first of all, consider that the floor is pretty dirty. But if you've got cardboard out on the floor, don't go kneeling on it, because everywhere you put your knee, it's just crushed the tubes, and the tubes are your strength. Okay, so don't do that. Now come over here. These clamps are getting the side of this, but they're not getting the center. So I can come over here and I can use a weight of some sort, pop that in there. Doesn't matter if it changes the shape there, I can flex that shape back and forth. I'm gonna leave this for just a second. This one's been gluing, this one was glued yesterday, so it's completely set up. Now it has crushed a little bit. So I've got to pay attention to this, because if I put that crushed side down, I might be taking a risk. Okay? Now I sat on this within about 5 minutes of actually gluing. Okay? This one's been glued for a couple of days. I'll sit on that one here in about 5 minutes, but just to save us some time, I'm not going to be careful cutting this out, so I just need a piece of cardboard that will span the top of that seat, so I'm just guessing at it. Come about here. Clarify, you're never going to freehand your cardboard. It's bad form. Okay. So, I'm just going to put this. So that's far less than a quarter sheet of cardboard, right there. Far less. And it's a single ply piece of cardboard right here. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to be a little careful sitting down on it, but I'm going to sit down on this. I'm relaxed. That is completely holding my weight. Okay. I need a chair, or somebody want to roll that over to me? Yeah.
Yeah, that's up your feet. Pick up your feet.
Just have to balance here a little bit. Feet are off the ground. It's not crazy. It's holding. Oh, a single ply cardboard. I weigh 275 pounds. Okay. I'm a heavyweight. Okay. This is holding me. I'm completely content. I don't feel like I'm going to fall over. When I sit on that one after being glued for only about 5 minutes, I might be a little kind of cautious. This one's been gluing. It's been sitting for not quite 24 hours, but it's been sitting for a while, and it's sturdy. It's not doing anything. That's less than a quarter sheet of cardboard, single ply, and it's holding 275 pounds. You don't have to worry about whether, if you're conscientious at all, thoughtful at all, you don't have to worry about whether or not it's going to hold your weight. You'll be able to sit through the entire critique on your chair and be just fine.
Is that what you can have us do?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You're going to sit on your chairs. It is a requirement for the critique.
Like for the entire critique?
Well, yeah, while other people are being critiqued, sit on your chair.
Flex.
So now this is holding my weight. How aesthetically pleasing is it? It's not really, right? So I've got to figure out some things that I can do, like where maybe I'll cut through this, but as soon as I cut through this, I weaken it. So I might want to consider, well, if I cut through this and I weaken the single ply, maybe I do double or triple ply so that I can open up some areas. So I can cut some arches in it or something so that it's not just this tube. Because frankly, if you did something like this, it's not going to result in a great grade because it's really not that interesting. Okay. So structural integrity is what I have now. Now I got to think about, well, how could I design this? How could I make this better? How could I do something interesting so it's not just a shop stool like what you're sitting on over there. Okay? But you can see I'm not worried at all about going down. I can even move a little bit side to side, put some torsion on this, and I'm not going anywhere. Okay? So it's immensely strong. But now you got to think about the aesthetics. So all those things like vertical tubes, horizontal tubes, lamination, multiply, all that kind of stuff has to come into consideration as you're doing this. Because I'll guarantee you, if I was sitting on a tube that was 4-ply, I could get up on, say I've got a 4-ply tube and I've got a 4-ply seat, I could get up on top of this and almost jump up and down and not break. So it is pretty amazing how structurally sound and capable cardboard is. But now you got to design with it. If you have any small points of union where they could tip like this, that's going to be a problem. So we're going to have to engineer some kind of buttressing or something like that. Buttresses, if you don't know what those are, if you look over the Manti Temple over Manti, those ribs on the external, those are engaged buttresses. If you look at like Notre Dame Cathedral or any of the great Gothic cathedrals, they have what are called flying buttresses. They're weight supports that go out on the sides. This is a structural, almost architectural thing, so it's not a bad idea to look at architectural models for guidance and structure. You want to do architecture, right? So you could be influenced by that kind of thing. So just be aware of that. But the whole time I'm talking to you right now, I'm sitting on a piece of cardboard. And I can lift my feet up off of the floor, wiggle around, and it's holding, okay? I'm not going to show you everything I know because I don't want to steal from you the opportunity to learn from your materials. Because that's truly an opportunity. There's some cool stuff that you can determine. You remember the one young lady with the chair that was just like all this organic, like tube structure all over the place? I looked at that, and when I first saw her plan, I thought, there's no way she's going to accomplish that. She did. They held their weight. It's fine. So, work the problem, work individually, but also work as a team, support one another, and this will be really cool. You probably end up with something you feel pretty good about. One of the reasons why this is literally the only project from my 3D design class that I teach, the one that I took as a student that I teach now. And I think it's because there's so much value in this, and it's hard, it's complex. There's a reason why I don't tell you can go out and buy 30 sheets of cardboard. I want you to engineer this. You could build a good, aesthetically pleasing seat with one sheet of cardboard. That would be a real challenge. I'm giving you 4. But I learned how to do hard things. You're going to learn how to do hard things. And if you learn how to do hard things, if you learn to trust yourselves, then doors open you couldn't imagine, okay? That's all I've got. So if you want to experiment with some cardboard, or if you need to go back to the drawing board a little bit based on the brainstorming and what you've seen here, it's completely up to you. Other than our meeting at the beginning of next class on Tuesday to review maquettes, you are self-guided from here out. So set a schedule, follow it, be successful.
So do we need a maquette done by next
Tuesday. Yep, Tuesday. We're going to look at it right at the beginning of class. And that's the last formal organized class gathering we're going to have for about 2.5 weeks. Okay? I'll be here. One maquette.